Today, we're diving into a topic that is quickly becoming a hot and often misunderstood trend in the world of hormone therapy: cycling your HRT. It's something I'm asked about all the time by you guys, the listeners, my clients, our members, a lot of people on my Instagram feed for some reason. And even my colleagues have been reaching out and asking me about my thoughts on cycling HRT. And trust me, it's not as simple as just doing it or not, like everything else when it comes to your hormones. Here at Hormone Solutions in our practice, we actually prefer two cycle hormones and typically recommend this to our patients, though it's not a one size fits all approach. Some women see incredible benefits from cycling, while others don't feel the need for it or don't want to complicate things too much. And that's the beauty of it. You get to make it your own. But here's the thing: education is key. There are so many ways to approach hormone therapy, and cycling is just one of them. It's not the be all and end all, but it can be a great option for some. Everyone's unique, so you've really got to listen to your body and to this episode. If it resonates with you, then I'd absolutely encourage you to give it a try. Let's break it down and see if cycling HRT is something that could work for you. Now, before we get into cycling, let's first make sure we're all on the same page when it comes to hormone replacement therapy terminology. There are a few different approaches to, or I should say, there's actually a lot of different approaches to hormone therapy, and they all vary in how they're dosed, how often you take them, and the combinations of hormones used. First off, that I think is the most common way to do hormones, especially in the medical, like mainstream medical world, and that's low dose static dosing. It's a daily low dose static protocol that typically involves taking around 0.25 to zero point 0.5 milligrams of estradiol, typically given in a patch or a gel. And oftentimes you'll see it being used with an 80-20 estradiol combination, at least in the functional world, maybe not in mainstream medical, but in the functional world, you'll often see it being given with 80% estriol and 20% estradiol. This is used by practitioners who believe that estradiol should be used because it's less proliferative than estradiol. But estriol is a very weak hormone and is our pregnancy hormone, our pregnancy estrogen. Now, I've discussed this controversy, I'm going to call it, at length on this show. I did a round table called The Great Estrogen Debate, which you can go back and listen to. So I'm not going to be getting into that topic today. Along with this 80-20 or low dose estradiol, you'll often be given 100 milligrams of oral progesterone to be taken daily. This approach doesn't fluctuate. It stays the same every day. It's simple, consistent, and works for a lot of women who don't want to complicate things too much. At these low levels, even though they're low, women will oftentimes get relief from the little kind of outward symptoms of hormonal loss, like hot flashes, night sweats, and the little bit of moodiness that they might be experiencing. Then there's a slightly higher static dose protocol. This one can range anywhere from the 0.25 milligrams to 1 milligram of estradiol, or a higher dosed combination of the 80-20 or 50-50 bias, the estradiol and estriol combo, depending on your needs and how your body responds to those hormones. Along with the estrogen, you'll typically take between 100 even all the way up to 400 milligrams of oral progesterone daily, or transdermal progesterone 50 to 75 milligrams. This still follows the static approach, but you're working with higher doses to address specific symptoms or imbalances. It is the same dose of both estrogen and progesterone, and it's taken daily. Now, this is typically used by hormone replacement clinics that are a little bit more in the know that, we need to get these levels of estrogen and progesterone to a certain place to really reap the benefits of hormone replacement therapy so that we can get the brain and the bone protection of hormone replacement therapy, which you can't get, or at least very little. Maybe you could get a little bit from the low static dosing of estrogen and progesterone. We typically need to get our levels up higher in order to get those anti-aging benefits where, we're getting that organ health out of using our HRT. Then there's progesterone only cycling. In this protocol, you'll take estrogen daily, but the progesterone is cycled on and off. Most commonly, it's done by taking progesterone for 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off. If you're still as a cycling woman, it's taken the last 2 weeks of your cycle, or even 3 weeks on, 1 week off if you're menopausal, or if you're late perimenopause or having troubles with your period, maybe have some estrogen dominance or trouble sleeping, then some practitioners will say, okay, use progesterone for the last 3 weeks of your cycle and then take the week of your cycle off. The idea here is that you're mimicking a more natural rhythm of progesterone to support your body's hormonal fluctuations. We use this protocol often in our practice as we see it working better than using progesterone daily, which I will tell you why later on in this podcast. It is not complicated. Most women can follow this protocol, and we simply see things working better. Now, there's an interesting variation that I hear about sometimes from our patients that it's not common, but I do hear it, and that is the weekend off approach. The weekend off approach is where you take progesterone every day during the week, but then you take the weekends off. And for some women, I think this works for them. I really don't see why this is done. This is so far away from how we naturally produce progesterone that I don't see the point of this. I think I've recommended this maybe once or twice just to the woman who wants to take her progesterone every single day, but yet wants some benefits of taking that break from progesterone. I think I remember telling one woman, like, okay, if you can, just take the weekends off. But I really don't agree with it. I don't think that it's the best solution. I think there's other solutions that can work a lot better. So that can be, that's something that, like I said, we don't see much of, but it is out there. Then there's the Wiley Protocol, which was developed by a woman, T.S. Wiley, Susan, I think her name was, but she goes by T.S. Wiley. Now, Suzanne Summers was a big proponent of the Wiley Protocol and did this herself. It is quite controversial. The Wiley Protocol is a biomimetic rhythmic protocol for replacing hormones with bioidentical hormones. So what exactly do we mean by rhythm? Wiley talked a lot about how the body operates on rhythms that are governed by a kind of master clock, similar to how a conductor leads an orchestra. This clock synchronizes everything in the body, with different systems rising and falling in a carefully timed dance based on environmental cues like light that keep us in sync with the 24-hour day. Our hormones work the same way. They surge and ebb in tune with this rhythm, controlling everything from our mood to our energy levels, and most importantly, our reproductive health. This rhythm is based on the circadian clock in our cells, which tracks the 24-hour rotation of the planet. For about 28 days, the moon and the body are in sync, and this cycle repeats. The Wiley Protocol harnesses these natural rhythms to establish the right doses of estradiol and natural progesterone. These hormones are applied via topical creams that are specifically formulated to mimic the hormone levels a woman would naturally produce when she's in her prime, in her 20s. Why? Because when we're young and cycling, we're at our healthiest. Most women don't suffer from heart attacks, breast cancer, Alzheimer's, osteoporosis, or type 2 diabetes during this phase of life. The idea here is to restore those youthful hormone levels for optimal health and longevity. So, how does the biomimetic rhythm work in practice? Women on the Wiley Protocol experience a cycle that mirrors the natural fluctuations of estradiol and progesterone. Estrogen peaks, falls, and then peaks again in a smaller surge. Progesterone peaks around day 21, and for those of us who still have a uterus, we aim for a 5-day period, a faux period if you're in menopause, with a heavier flow around days 2 and 3. They actually, like women on the Wiley Protocol, welcome the bleeding because it's a sign that the system is working as it should. It means the hormones are doing their job and their entire body is getting the support it needs. This protocol isn't about popping pills or taking gels or patches. They use measured doses of cream, which are applied twice a day. The creams go into our fat base, and then our heartbeat pulls the hormones into the bloodstream in natural pulses, mimicking how the body would handle hormone production in a healthy young woman. Now, why did T.S. Wiley develop this approach? Which, by the way, is still very much present in today's world of hormone therapy. Many women do this protocol. Wiley looked at the different hormonal states women experience over their lifetimes: cycling, pregnant, breastfeeding, and declining hormones, and decided to focus on state number 1, the healthy cycling woman. She stated this is the most physically and experimentally replicable, and it's the state of optimal hormone health. Wiley wanted to create a protocol that used natural hormones to restore the body to its prime, offering true hormone restoration therapy, not just replacement. That's the heart of the Wiley Protocol. It's about restoring the natural rhythm, and that's a big part of why it's been such a powerful option for women looking to optimize their hormones in a natural, holistic way. It's not about trying to recreate pregnancy or breastfeeding. It's about giving the body what it truly needs to function at its best, just like when we were younger. Now, there's been a lot of controversy about this protocol, mostly because there's been little research done on it. But like all protocols, it works for some and doesn't work for others. I have not personally done this method, but I am very much so open to it. I personally lean towards a new protocol that stems from the Wiley Protocol, and that is either physiological restoration protocol or the Gersh Advanced Cycling Protocol. Now, she doesn't actually call it the Gersh Protocol. I'm naming it that because it came from a course that I took with Dr. Felice Gersh. Now, physiologic restoration is more like Wiley, but uses less hormones and keeps the cycling on the same schedule. Now, Wiley dosage of estradiol, ladies, just to give you an idea, can get up very high, much higher than any of the previous protocols that I described. So we're talking like 14 milligrams a day of estradiol, never biased or estriol is in the mix. The doses change every couple of days, and it's applied twice a day. Mostly transdermal cream, but oral progesterone can be used, but you typically don't want to take oral in the daytime. And to get that high of progesterone, you need to take several hundred milligrams of oral, as it's primarily converted to allopregnanolone when it is swallowed. So it's preferred in the physiologic restoration and definitely the Wiley protocol to use transdermal progesterone instead, because when you start getting up really high with the oral progesterone and you get more and more allopregnanolone when you're swallowing it, that can make it can be too sedative. It can make you very sleepy, groggy, brain fog. And women, of course, don't like that. And they have a hard time doing that in the daytime. And they really encourage to do twice a day dosing because your hormones will run out of your system quite quickly. You know, estradiol, it's about 6 hours. I think progesterone's about the same, 6, 7 hours. And so their theory is, as cycling women, we always have these hormones in our body. So let's try and mimic this as best we can and do twice a day dosing. And then they change that dose every few days. I think it's every 3 to 4 days. The dosing changes because you're trying to mimic that 20-year-old woman cycle. And so that takes changing levels every couple of days. We tend to look at our cycle as a pain in the ass, really. Excuse my language. And that the purpose of it is strictly for fertility. But I want you to start seeing it in a different light than you probably have your whole life. Rather than this inconvenient, oftentimes painful, pain in the butt thing that happens to us women. Rather, let's look at it moving forward. I want all of you to start looking at it as a fifth vital sign of health, an incredible dance that happens amongst our hormones each and every month, triggering not just a bleed, but also triggering biological events all over the female body. More than 4,000 gene products and 400 biological processes in a woman's body depends on estradiol and progesterone. This highlights the profound influence of estradiol and progesterone on nearly every system in a woman's body, not just the menstrual cycle. So let's talk about the hormonal dance and how this is more than just a period, because this is the whole premise behind cycling hormones. We need to go beyond fertility, because women will say, well, I'm in menopause. I'm not fertile anymore. I'm not looking to have babies. So why would I do this? It's a pain in the butt. No, thank you. I don't want to get a freaking period in menopause. Like, forget about it. But we need to change our mindset here if we really want to understand the power of cycling hormones. Each month, estradiol and progesterone fluctuate in a very carefully orchestrated rhythm, driving the menstrual cycle. But their effects go far beyond ovulation and menstruation. They influence brain function, metabolism, immune health, bone density, cardiovascular health, and more. Estradiol and progesterone act as gene regulators, meaning they influence the expression of thousands of genes. For example, estradiol stimulates genes that support collagen production. Hello, anti-wrinkle, neurotransmitter function, which drives and protects our mental health, and energy metabolism. aka weight distribution, and blood sugar. Progesterone regulates genes involved in anti inflammatory pathways, brain protection, and blood sugar balance. Without these hormones in balance, many essential biological processes can be disrupted. These hormones don't just act in the reproductive system, they are systemic regulators. Estradiol enhances dopamine and serotonin, while progesterone supports GABA, a calming neurotransmitter. This is why estrogen fluctuations can impact mood, memory, and mental clarity. Estradiol helps regulate insulin sensitivity and fat distribution, while progesterone supports thyroid function and water balance. Progesterone has anti-inflammatory properties, helping to balance the immune system and prevent excessive inflammation. Estradiol maintains bone density and protects against cardiovascular disease by keeping arteries flexible and regulating cholesterol levels. Both progesterone and estrogen help support mitochondrial function. Estrogen helps to build muscle and protect muscle by increasing protein synthesis. So why does this matter? Hormonal shift. The rhythms, not static hormones, whether from natural cycle, perimenopause, or hormonal imbalances, don't just affect the period. They ripple across the entire body, influencing everything from mood to metabolism, immune health, and aging. This is why maintaining hormonal balance isn't about much more than just fertility. It's critical for overall vitality and our long-term health. What if this was what we were taught as young girls and boys in sex education classes? Wouldn't that be incredible? Instead, we are taught that this monthly cycle causes us to be in pain, that it's messy and just inconvenient. We are told by doctors, parents, social media to do all we can to suppress it and treat it with hormone disrupting chemicals like the birth control. It's just best to shut it down altogether. That's the message we're receiving. Young girls are receiving the message, hey, you don't have to have this messy, gross, inconvenient period once a month that's causing acne and painful periods and cramping. No, you could just take this pill every single day and you won't get a period when you're on it. As if that's not tempting to the teenage girl. Really, we're saying shut down a process so key to our health and well-being that affects nearly every organ in the body. As cycling women, our estradiol, progesterone, and testosterone are anything but static through the month. These hormones are going up and down. The menstrual cycle is a beautifully complex hormone-driven process that prepares the body for a potential pregnancy each month. It's divided into 4 main phases: menstrual, follicular, ovulatory, and luteal, with estradiol, progesterone, and testosterone fluctuating in a rhythmic pattern throughout. It's important to know this information so that you can understand why rhythmic HRT could be the best choice when it comes to hormone replacement therapy. So just quickly, I'm going to just give you a recap because many women don't know this. There's the menstrual phase, days 1 to 5 typically. It's also the reset phase. And what's happening? The uterus sheds its lining, your period, marking day 1 of the cycle. Hormone levels are at their lowest, which can cause the fatigue, the cramps, the mood dips. All three of your hormones, estradiol, progesterone, testosterone, are all low during this time. How do you feel? Typically, energy is a bit low. You're more introverted, time for self-reflection, time to chill. But starts to build back up as estradiol begins to rise toward the end of that week, which then we start to enter into more of the follicular phase. The follicular phase is really days 1 all the way through to 13, but it's really, you come out of that 1 to 5 bleeding phase, and then it really picks up speed because estrogen starts to rise. This is the building phase. The brain is signaling the ovaries to grow follicles, each containing an egg. One follicle becomes dominant, producing estradiol to thicken the uterine lining. Rising estradiol enhances mood, skin, and energy levels. We love our estrogen days. At least I do. Those were always like the best, is that high estradiol phase. The hormones, well, estradiol, it starts low, but then it rises steadily and peaks before ovulation on day 12, which is really an important day. Progesterone remains low to none. Like it is bottomed out. If you look at the graphs of your follicular phase, you don't even see progesterone. It's a straight line at the very bottom of it. Testosterone slowly rises, boosting libido, motivation, and strength right before you ovulate. You typically have increased energy, more confidence, more mental clarity, thanks to the peak of that estradiol. Then there's the ovulatory phase, days 14 and 15. This is the peak phase. Estradiol peaks, triggering a surge of luteinizing hormone, which releases the egg. Testosterone spikes, increases libido and motivation. So you go out there and start looking for, who to procreate. This is the whole point of it. The new empty follicle begins producing progesterone, preparing your body for a potential pregnancy. This is when estradiol's at its highest, and then it'll actually drop a little bit. Progesterone will begin to rise after that ovulation. Testosterone peaks, then drops off a little bit after ovulation. So the hormones, they're driving you. They make you feel attractive. It makes you feel more social and energized. It's nature's way of encouraging reproduction because it's like, ooh, we're about to ovulate. Let's get this woman out there showing off her curves and putting out those pheromones to attract a partner. The testosterone makes you want to go out there and get it. Estradiol is making you want to actually do it. This beautiful surge of hormones that happens to try to get you to procreate. After ovulation, the corpus luteum, the empty follicle, is what produces progesterone to maintain the uterine lining. If no pregnancy occurs, progesterone and estradiol drop sharply, triggering the next period. So, estradiol, it has a second smaller peak in the mid-luteal range, and then once again drops at the end of the cycle. Progesterone dominates, reaching its highest levels mid-luteal phase, so around day 21 of your cycle. And testosterone just kind of cruises along at the same level for that second half of your cycle. How do you feel? Well, first half of that luteal phase, so like week 3, you're typically calm and focused thanks to that progesterone. The second half, maybe not so much. That's typically where women have the worst time, which is a week before the period onset, and will typically get a little bit irritable, fatigued, bloated, and moody as the hormones drop. So estradiol, the builder, peaks after ovulation, boosting mood, libido, and energy. Progesterone, the balancer, rises after ovulation, promoting calm, but drops before the period, triggering some PMS usually. Testosterone's the motivator, peaks at ovulation, and then kind of has a little plateau and just kind of cruises along for the rest of the cycle, but it increases libido and strength. Now that you understand that these hormones have peaks and troughs, let's dive into what these peaks and troughs are actually doing besides managing fertility. Day 12. Oh, how I love day 12. The estradiol peak, one of the most, if not the most important peak of the entire cycle. In cycling years, this peak makes the lining of your uterus thicken with new layers of cells. Your breasts swell, pheromones amplify, sex drive goes up, vaginal mucus increases. Testosterone also spikes during this time, sending your body signals to get out there and get that mate, procreate right before ovulation occurs in hopes that you will get pregnant. No, thank you. But the spike of estradiol also helps regulate our key tumor suppressing gene called P53, which is one of the most important driving factors behind why we may want to cycle our HRT. The estradiol peak, followed by a sharp drop around ovulation, can stimulate P53 into action, acting as a built-in regulatory mechanism to maintain cellular balance. As estradiol rises to its highest levels, it stimulates cell proliferation in estrogen-sensitive tissues like breasts, uterus, and ovaries. This temporarily suppresses P53 activity, allowing for necessary tissue growth, which is a good thing. We want it's thickening of the uterine lining, follicle maturation. If estradiol were chronically high, however, without progesterone to balance it, prolonged P53 suppression could increase the risk of uncontrolled cell growth. Estradiol will drop, and immediately after ovulation, around day 14 to 16, P53 activation occurs. Once ovulation occurs, that estradiol drops sharply. This removes its suppressive effect on P53, triggering P53-driven cell cycle regulation. Now, I know that's a mouthful. Think of it's acting as a checkpoint. So P53 acts as this checkpoint, detecting any DNA damage, which you don't want, or excessive proliferation from the estradiol surge, and initiating repair or apoptosis if needed. Isn't that beautiful? Okay, so I'm a nerd. This helps prevent mutations, excessive growth, or potential cancerous changes in rapidly dividing cells. Progesterone takes over days 15 to 28, which further supports P53. As progesterone rises, it reduces estrogen receptor activity, preventing unchecked estradiol-driven growth. Progesterone can directly enhance P53 activity, reinforcing its tumor-suppressing role. This phase helps the body clear out unnecessary or damaged cells, further maintaining cellular health. Why is this important for women's health? The estradiol surge is necessary for ovulation and tissue growth, but its sharp drop acts as a safety trigger for P53 to step in and regulate cell turnover. If ovulation doesn't occur, as in PCOS, perimenopause, or an anovulatory cycle, estradiol remains relatively high without a significant drop, leading to chronic P53 suppression and potential risks like endometrial hyperplasia or fibroids, so that we get that uncontrolled estrogen growth And that's when you'll see heavier periods because now our endometrium, our lining becomes thicker because it doesn't have progesterone in there counterbalancing that growth. And then we can get growth of fibroids, growth of ovarian cysts, growth of breast cysts, because that estrogen is not having that beautiful suppression that progesterone helps us with. So you might be asking, well, why not use progesterone all the time then? Because it suppresses this growth. If we don't need a uterine lining in menopause because we are done having kids, seems like a good thing, right? So why not suppress the estradiol driven growth? Because it is not just stimulating growth in the uterus and breasts. Estradiol supports neuron growth. Hello, I think we all want some neuron growth, and synaptic plasticity, which is important for learning and memory. It enhances dopamine and serotonin activity, which helps with mood, focus, and motivation. Too little estradiol, like in menopause, is linked to brain fog, memory issues, and mood instability. Estradiol stimulates osteoblasts, bone building cells, helping maintain bone density. When estradiol declines in menopause, it leads to bone loss and higher osteoporosis risk. So we want that estrogen's growth stimulation on our bones. It also stimulates endothelial cell growth, keeping blood vessels flexible, which is so important for heart health. It helps regulate cholesterol by increasing HDL, the good cholesterol, and lowering LDL, the bad cholesterol. This is why postmenopausal women have a higher risk of heart disease. Less estradiol means less vascular protection. It helps boost collagen production, ladies. We all want collagen. We lose our collagen as we age because we lose these vital hormones. We want that stimulation, that proliferation, the growth of collagen. Hello, keeps our skin firm and hydrated. Estradiol stimulates hair growth by prolonging the growth phase of hair follicles. Yes, like do you know how many times women say, oh, I've lost my hair since going into menopause? This could be why. A drop in estradiol can lead to the thinner skin, wrinkles, and hair thinning. Estradiol helps regulate gut motility, moving everything through the gut system, preventing bloating and constipation. It supports a diverse microbiome, which plays a role in metabolism. The estrobolome, the gut bacteria that processes estrogen, it helps support this. And remember, immune system. It can stimulate immune cell activity, making the immune system more responsive. So yeah, at first, daily progesterone might sound like a great idea. After all, it's calming, protective, and balances estrogen, right? But here's the problem. When you take progesterone daily, you're not only suppressing growth of those neurons and bones, you will also be suppressing estrogen receptor activity. Think of a hormone receptor like a lock and a hormone like a key. Imagine your body as a giant high security building. Every room has a locked door, and only the right key can open it. Hormones are like those keys floating around in the bloodstream looking for the exact lock receptor they fit into. When the key finds its lock, it turns, unlocking the door and triggering a specific response, like turning on the lights, adjusting the thermostat, or activating a machine inside the room. Without these locks, receptors, the keys, hormones, would just float around uselessly, unable to deliver their message. And if the lock is broken, missing, or jammed, the key won't work, meaning the intended action, whether it's metabolism, mood regulation, or reproduction, doesn't happen properly. This is why hormone receptors are absolutely necessary. They ensure that each hormone delivers its message only where it's needed, keeping the body's systems running smoothly. So, if estradiol receptors are being suppressed by all of this daily progesterone, that means you don't get the full benefits of estradiol, the hormone responsible for everything from brain function and metabolism to bone strength and cardiovascular health. And here's where it gets even more interesting. Estradiol is actually needed to upregulate progesterone receptors. It's like it helps to wake up your progesterone receptors, which are asleep for the first half of the month. If estrogen doesn't rise high enough, if it's constantly being blunted by daily progesterone, your body may not respond as well to the progesterone you're taking because estradiol wasn't able to upregulate those progesterone receptors enough. In other words, progesterone needs estrogen to work optimally. But if we're flattening estrogen's natural peaks, we're not getting the full benefits of either hormone. So what's the solution? Mimicking the body's natural hormonal rhythms by cycling progesterone instead of taking it daily. When we allow estradiol to fully express itself in the first half of the cycle and then introduce progesterone in the second half, we get the best of both worlds. Estradiol's growth and repair benefits when we need them, and progesterone's calming, stabilizing effects when we need those. And we can take this even further if we want by strategically spiking our hormones on key days to amplify their effects. This is the Gersh protocol. Your body isn't designed to run on flat, steady hormone levels. It relies on peaks and drops, especially a big estradiol surge around day 12 and a progesterone spike around day 21 to activate critical cellular processes that we've discussed here today. Let's talk about that day 12 estradiol spike again. It does a lot more than just trigger that ovulation and upregulate progesterone receptors. It even helps upregulate its own estrogen receptors. When estradiol spikes, it doesn't just do its job and disappear. It primes your cells to be more sensitive to estrogen's effects in the second half of the cycle. Without this peak, estrogen receptors don't fully activate, and you miss out on estradiol's benefits for your brain, bones, skin, heart, and metabolism. Plus, this spike and drop triggers an enzyme, that enzyme, P53, that we talked about, the body's guardian of the genome. It's a powerful tumor suppressor. It detects the damaged or rapidly dividing cells and either repairs them or helps get rid of them. And here's where it gets really cool. Estradiol stimulates cell growth, which is necessary for ovulation and tissue repair. But right after estradiol drops, post-ovulation, P53 kicks into that action, cleaning up the excess cells and protecting against uncontrolled growth, fibroids, endometrial hypoplasia, and even estrogen-driven cancers. So estrogen doesn't cause cancer, but it can make things proliferate if it's out of control. And then we get that progesterone rise and peak around day 21. And this isn't just about balancing estrogen. It reinforces the P53 cleanup process. So while estradiol's drop triggers P53, progesterone strengthens the process, ensuring that any unnecessary cells are cleared away. It protects us against the estrogen dominance. It calms the nervous system, reduces inflammation. This is all progesterone. Progesterone binds to those GABA receptors, making you feel more calm and relaxed. It's anti-inflammatory and prevents excessive inflammation triggered by any uncontrolled estradiol-driven cell growth. And it supports metabolic and thyroid function. The progesterone peak helps regulate insulin sensitivity, water balance, and thyroid hormone activity, which are all critical for energy, weight management, and overall metabolic health. So there's just a little recap of this beautiful rhythmic dance that happens and why it happens. So if you're taking estradiol at a steady dose with no spike and progesterone daily with no true peak, you may not be getting the full benefits of either hormone. Without an estradiol surge, your estrogen and progesterone receptors aren't fully activated, and P53 doesn't get the proper on-off signaling it needs. Without a strong progesterone peak, you could be missing out on its neuroprotective, anti-inflammatory, and metabolic benefits. Daily progesterone use may suppress estrogen receptor activity too much, preventing estradiol from doing its job. If we really want to get the most of HRT, we need to respect the body's natural hormonal rhythms. Allow estradiol to rise and peak around mid-cycle. This could mean adjusting dosing or using a cyclical method where estrogen increases slightly leading up to ovulation. Take progesterone only in the second half of the cycle, even if it's a faux cycle in menopause, not daily. This mimics how the body naturally works and allows for a strong progesterone peak when needed. This cycling approach better supports receptor activation, enhances progesterone's effectiveness, and ensures estradiol-driven processes like bone health, brain function, and metabolism work properly. Now, I'm going to say this again, ladies. Keep in mind, there's been very little research on this. No research comparing static doses to something like the Wiley Protocol. There's millions of women on static dosing. And I will remind you that many of them, millions of them, I'm sure, are still thriving on their HRT. Now, I'd have to go in and look at everybody and how they're functioning and how their brain's functioning, their organs are functioning, bones, bone health, etc., to really know, are they fully thriving? Do we really know what's happening? I mean, it can be compared almost to the woman that says, I don't have any symptoms of menopause, so I am not going to go on HRT because I feel good. I'm not having hot flashes. I'm not having vaginal dryness. I feel good. I don't have any symptoms. But what about the inside? Is that woman developing osteoporosis? Because darn right, she ain't feeling that until she breaks a bone. What about her heart? How's her heart health? How's her collagen production? Is she aging faster? There's good evidence to say that yes, women do age faster without HRT. And so women that are on a static low dose and thinking they're doing great because they no longer have hot flashes, and that was their one outward symptom of menopause, could they maybe not, could they be suffering still on the inside and not know it? This is the problem. And so we have to think about the natural process of things and know that Mother Nature does nothing by accident. Everything has purpose behind it and how our body functions. So should we not try to respect that now that we know that it goes far beyond fertility, the whole cycling business, that is much more than just getting a period and being fertile? Should we not try? We can never completely mimic Mother Nature. No way. But is there a way that we could do this that could at least respect those rhythms to the best of our ability? If you're on HRT and you feel like you're not getting the full benefits. Or if you're struggling with estrogen dominance, progesterone resistance, or unexplained symptoms, it may not be how much hormones you're taking, but how you're taking it. The key might be in mimicking the natural cycle, allowing for those essential peaks and drops that drive hormonal balance. Your body was designed to work in rhythms. And when we follow those rhythms with HRT, we can get the absolute most out of it. Is this for you? I can't say. But I can tell you that when I've been in certain Facebook groups, for instance, that are women following the Wiley Protocol or physiologic restoration, or we have many of our members and patients that do the Gersh Advanced Cycling Protocol, which is to a lesser degree of the physiologic or the Wiley Protocol. It's much easier if you ask me. And we're still respecting the cycling and the peaks and troughs, but it's in a much more simple way. But I will tell you that we see it working really well and that people feel good. So my clinical experience with these things, I have definitely seen that women thrive better, that they get better sleep, that they look, that they're keeping hold of their youthful look, compared to the woman that's on the low static dose who can still have, issues with brain fog, vaginal dryness, like all of these little things that just won't go away, but she'll put up with them because some of her stuff went away. And we know from research too that levels of estrogen need to get to a certain point in order to have bone protection. And that ain't at 0.25 milligrams every day, ladies. It's more than that. We see that they get the brain volumization at higher levels of estrogen, not at low levels of estrogen. We see better receptor health when we're cycling that progesterone. So when I'm in these Facebook groups, I've asked women, why did you switch to the Wiley Protocol from what you were doing? Because to me, it was like, oh my goodness, this is like, whoa, this is a lot of estrogen. We're changing it every 3 days. It's pricey. It's, if you ask me, a bit of a pain in the butt to have to change dosing every couple of days. And so I asked them, a number of them, why did you do this? Why did you switch to the Wiley Protocol from your static dosing? And across the board, they all said, because this is where I felt my best. I was feeling okay, but I was still suffering. I still had symptoms of hormonal loss, even though I was on HRT. And when I switched to the cycling method with these higher doses, either Wiley or physiologic restoration, that's when all the symptoms went away. That's when my sex drive came back. That's when my sleep was restored. That's when I just started to feel like myself again. And I should have pulled them up and actually read them to you because they were pretty profound what these women had to say about how much better they felt on these hormones. But now all that said, I'm going to remind you again, we're all individuals. And some women can't tolerate higher doses of hormones. I have many women in our practice that are extremely sensitive and they have to actually use very small doses of hormones. I have women that refuse to get a period. They're like, forget it. I am like embracing menopause and the fact that I don't have to bleed every month again. Don't let that happen to me. And so then they have to use that progesterone every day usually, or smaller amounts so that they don't build up a uterine lining. But that is what they need. And that's where they feel their best. And that's what they want to do. And so we're going to support that. And so it's really important to find a practitioner, I think, that's really open to working with you and, teaching you how to maybe do this cycling protocol, at least to some degree, so that you could see if you do feel better and if you are getting better symptom relief when you're getting your levels high enough and when you start cycling the hormones a little bit. So, ladies, that is the case for cycling hormones. I appreciate you listening. Until next week, thanks for tuning in.